Initially, Millie was hesitant to share with anyone that she had discovered a black lizard in the woods. However, after noticing its declining health in the subsequent days, she realized the necessity of involving a veterinarian. What she hadn't anticipated was the vet's dramatic response upon seeing the lizard. Instantly, he demanded that Millie and her father distance themselves from it. Shocked and confused, they complied, though the vet offered no explanation as he hastily made a phone call and exited the room, evidently keen on keeping the discussion private. Fearing the vet might seize her newfound reptilian friend due to his alarming reaction, Millie contemplated escaping with the terrarium, but her father restrained her. He sympathized with her feelings but insisted they respect the professional's advice and confront whatever was coming. Shortly afterward, the vet returned to the room with alarming news. Millie was unaware of the true nature of the creature she had saved, but the vet was all too familiar, astonished to find such a creature in his clinic, and more so in the country. He admitted the situation was beyond his capability. He had contacted specialists who were en route, prepared to ask Millie and her father some serious questions about their unusual find. Millie had always been drawn to the forest, her curiosity about nature and its inhabitants deepening since her early childhood. The woods offered a treasure trove of fascinating creatures, and today was no exception. Unbeknownst to her, she was about to encounter a creature that should have been impossible for her to find, an encounter that would alter her life forever. Normally, Millie's explorations were supervised by her mother, father, or another adult, given that she was only 9 years old and the forest could hide potential dangers. However, today she ventured alone. Her parents were busy, and despite her father, Michael, feeling guilty about not accompanying her, he also believed strongly in nurturing her love for nature. He trusted her familiarity with the forest and her proven responsibility. However, convincing Millie's mother, Anastasia, was another matter. Anastasia was extremely protective and found the idea of letting her young daughter explore the woods alone utterly preposterous. What Millie brought back from the forest that day was a lizard, but not just any lizard. Its very presence was enough to astonish the veterinarian. What was so shocking about this animal, and could it possibly be a danger to Millie? The unfolding events would soon reveal the answers to these pressing questions. Anastasia was struggling with self-forgiveness, yet she found herself swayed by her husband's persuasion. What truly tipped the scales, however, was witnessing how eager Millie was to explore the forest. Anastasia knew she couldn't confine her daughter indoors indefinitely, though she wondered if perhaps she should have. The forest, conveniently located near their home, beckoned, and Millie approached it with joy, almost dancing her way there. Armed with a basket and several glass jars for collecting insects, Millie was set on enjoying an entire afternoon there. That plan, however, was abruptly altered when she encountered an unexpected creature, shifting her focus entirely away from her bug collection and the scenic beauty. Millie had been joyfully roaming the forest for about 2 hours, her face lit with a constant smile, capturing countless photographs and delighting in the sight of various charming creatures. But then, she spotted a distinctly uncharming creature that starkly contrasted with the lush greenery. The creature was profoundly black, unlike anything Millie had ever seen. Initially hesitant, Millie knew approaching an unfamiliar creature could be risky. Despite understanding that turning back was the safest option, her curiosity was irrepressible, driving her closer with each passing moment, eager to uncover the identity of this mysterious being. As she neared, however, clarity did not follow. All she could surmise was that it resembled a lizard, though she had never encountered such a reptile in these woods before. A fact that made sense given the unsuitable climatic conditions for large lizards. This encounter left her puzzled and intrigued. Standing face to face with the unknown, Millie had picked up this piece of wisdom from her father, which instantly triggered her concern for the creature's survival in such an environment. She had one empty glass jar on her and thought she could perhaps rescue the lizard by taking it home. Although inexperienced in caring for such animals, Millie was confident she could gather ample guidance online. She believed the lizard would stand a better chance of thriving under her care than remaining in an environment that seemed unsuitable. Consequently, Millie made the regrettable choice to bring the lizard home. She prepared the jar with moss and leaves and made sure it was ventilated with holes in the lid. As she inched closer to the motionless lizard, concentrating intensely, beads of sweat began to form on her brow. Just a little closer, she thought. Then swiftly captured the lizard with the jar and secured the lid. Inside the jar, the lizard began to panic, thrashing about as if fighting for its life. The jar trembled in Millie's grip, prompting her to place it in her bag, hoping the darkness would calm the lizard under the mistaken belief that it might simulate night. Unaware that lizards are largely nocturnal, Millie didn't consider this factor significant. Her primary focus was on getting the lizard home safely and as swiftly as possible. Millie attempted to search online to determine the species of the black lizard she discovered, thinking it would be straightforward due to its unique color. Unfortunately, she lacked internet access until she left the forest. She then realized there were numerous black lizard species, yet none matched the one she had found. When Millie returned home, her parents were visibly relieved to see her after her prolonged absence. Even though it was planned, it's always unsettling for parents not to know the whereabouts of their 9-year-old daughter for a long time. They inquired about her day and if she had experienced anything unusual. Millie was reluctant to mention the lizard in her backpack, fearing their disapproval for bringing home an unknown creature, opting to keep the lizard a secret for now. She decided she needed to learn more about it before seeking their guidance. She assured her parents she had a wonderful day but was too tired to talk more and needed to rest in her room. Her parents agreed, as they had their own work to catch up on. Once in her room, Millie quickly took the jar with the black lizard out and placed it on her desk. By this time, the lizard had settled down, comfortably resting on the leafy bed Millie had prepared inside the jar. Even though the animal seemed stable for now, Millie was aware that its current condition might not last. It urgently required food, water, and a larger space to live in. Fortunately, Millie remembered that her parents had an old aquarium in the attic. With her parents busy downstairs, she seized the opportunity to retrieve it. Once she had the tank in her room, Millie discreetly exited the house through the roof window to avoid her parents' notice. She ventured into the garden to gather moss, leaves, and twigs to convert the aquarium into a suitable terrarium. After researching a lizard's diet online, Millie was relieved to find out they primarily consumed insects. Fortunately, she had a collection of bugs from earlier in the day. She felt a pang of guilt for the insects, but prioritizing the lizard's survival was more crucial for her at the moment. Upon returning inside, Millie quickly set up the terrarium, added a bowl of water, and cautiously moved the lizard into its new home. Concerned about potential toxins or bites from the unfamiliar creature, she was cautious during the transfer. Thankfully, it went smoothly. Millie then introduced some live bugs into the enclosure before sealing it. The lizard soon appeared quite satisfied in its new environment. Now, Millie faced a dilemma about the future. Keeping the lizard hidden and continually providing for it wasn't a viable long-term plan. She realized that she needed to gather more details to effectively assess her situation, particularly about whether the lizard posed any danger. However, identifying the specific species online proved challenging. Despite the scarcity of specific data, there was an abundance of general advice and cautionary notes regarding lizards. Amidst the plethora of information she reviewed, 2 points notably reassured her. Firstly, lizards seldom bite, and most lack the type of teeth necessary to pierce human skin, especially smaller varieties like the one she had encountered. Secondly, the toxicity and potential danger of a lizard or amphibian is often signaled by vivid coloring. Given that her lizard displayed no such colors, Millie was confident it wasn't poisonous, alleviating her concerns about its safety. This newfound comfort led her to take the lizard out of its enclosure for interaction, and she affectionately named it Sirius. Inspired by the beloved character Sirius Black from Harry Potter, her bond with Sirius grew stronger each day. Meanwhile, her parents noticed her increased time indoors, a deviation from her usual preference for the outdoors, but didn't feel compelled to inquire further. They simply observed that Millie was spending more time in her room than before. Despite no one noticing anything unusual, Millie had been secretly keeping a homemade terrarium under her desk. A secret that remained undiscovered for the time being. Initially, everything seemed fine for Millie and her lizard, but soon she observed troubling signs. The lizard's activity levels dropped, it ate less, and seemed to stop drinking water. Although Millie was not an expert on these creatures, she understood that these signs were not positive. Growing increasingly worried, Millie suspected that the environment wasn't suitable for her lizard. which would ideally thrive in a semi-tropical setting. Unsure how to replicate such a climate in her bedroom, she turned to the internet for advice. Online sources suggested a heat lamp was necessary, but after researching, Millie realized they were too costly for her modest savings. Confronted with a tough choice, Millie prioritized the lizard's well-being. Despite feeling anxious, she knew she had to reveal her secret to her parents. She feared their reaction to her long-kept secret, but hoped they could assist in caring for the lizard or perhaps take it to a vet. With trembling knees and the terrarium in her hands, Millie stepped into the living room where her mother, Anastasia, was occupied in the kitchen. When Millie descended the stairs, her mother Anastasia didn't immediately notice what was in her hands. At that moment, Michael was still at his workplace. Anastasia, busy in the kitchen, lowered the flame under a simmering pot and turned to greet her daughter with a welcoming smile. However, her smile quickly disappeared when she realized what Millie was clutching, a dusty old fish tank from the attic. It was puzzling enough that Millie had managed to lug the tank downstairs, and certainly, Anastasia had her questions, but her concern deepened when she observed that the tank wasn't empty and Millie looked visibly distressed, trying to understand the situation. Anastasia inquired about her daughter's troubled expression. Millie attempted to explain, but her words were choked by tears, leaving her unable to articulate her thoughts clearly. Sensing the urgency, Anastasia stepped closer to get a clearer view of the contents of the tank, which Millie held tightly. Inside, she noted an assortment of moss, tree bark, and even a small bowl of water. Millie had transformed the tank into a makeshift terrarium, but for what purpose? Suddenly, a slight movement inside the tank startled Anastasia, causing her to recoil and emit a small yelp. Her eyes then focused on the creature stirring within, a small black lizard. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. Millie, now extremely anxious, realized the critical nature of the moment. She needed to reassure her mother that bringing the creature home was the right decision and that it was imperative they care for it. Anastasia's gaze on Millie was stern and unwavering as she demanded an explanation. Millie, her voice trembling, confessed that she had saved the creature from certain death in the forest. She insisted she had been extremely cautious, although she knew her claim stretched the truth. Noticing her mother's skepticism, Millie realized that her actions had stirred conflicting emotions in Anastasia. Anastasia was torn. She had always emphasized the importance of not bringing unknown animals home, a rule Millie had clearly violated. However, Anastasia couldn't overlook her daughter's noble intentions. Millie had acted out of compassion, carefully handling the creature to save its life. As Anastasia mulled over her next steps, the atmosphere shifted with the arrival of Michael, fresh from work and in high spirits. His excitement mounted when he spotted the lizard in the fish tank. A nature enthusiast, Michael was thrilled by the prospect of observing an unfamiliar animal up close. With Michael's enthusiasm diffusing the tension, Anastasia felt her resolve weakening. It was challenging to maintain a strict stance when her husband was so captivated by Millie's discovery. She realized that any potential repercussions might need to be reconsidered given the circumstances. Millie would have to wait to visit later, once everything had calmed down, a decision that greatly eased her mind. She quickly shifted the conversation to the urgent matter at hand. The reason Molly had alerted them wasn't trivial. Millie had noticed that her mysterious lizard, Cyrus, was ailing. His appetite had decreased, he was drinking less, and his activity levels had dropped compared to when she first discovered him. She suspected he was either sick or not adapting well to his current surroundings. The next step, she believed, was to take Cyrus to a veterinarian to ascertain his condition before it worsened. However, her father disagreed. He argued that Cyrus had been managing fine in their natural environment until Millie confined him to a small glass enclosure. He suggested that the lizard's decline could be due to depression or the shock of being in a constrained space, and perhaps what Cyrus really needed was to be returned to his natural habitat. While Millie recognized the validity in her father's perspective, she couldn't shake off the feeling that Cyrus might genuinely need medical attention. Despite her parents' apparent disinterest in pursuing veterinary help, Millie knew if anything was to be done, the responsibility lay with her. In a bid to persuade her parents, she made an unexpected proposal. She would cover all the veterinary expenses herself if they would just accompany her. She even agreed to release Cerus back into the wild if he was found to be in good health. Michael tried to caution her about the potential financial burden, noting that the costs could deplete all her savings and possibly leave her in debt for a long time if the lizard required extensive care. Yet, Millie's determination to ensure the well-being of Cerus was evident, underscoring her deep commitment to the creature's welfare. Millie was resolute in her decision, and although her parents had mixed feelings, they ultimately respected her choice. While Anastasia was hesitant about her daughter spending all her savings on such a venture, Michael was more supportive of Millie pursuing her passion. It didn't take much for him to persuade his wife, who realized that obstructing Millie's plans would be a mistake if it truly mattered to her, even if it involved using all her financial resources. Michael reached out to the veterinary office to arrange a checkup for their newly rescued lizard and was fortunate to secure an appointment for the same afternoon. He anticipated it would be a brief visit, perhaps just 10 minutes. But the situation would soon prove to be more complicated than expected, a fact the vet would only discover upon examining the lizard. With a few hours left until their veterinary appointment, Millie and Michael used the time to examine the black lizard more closely and conducted additional research. Mike wisely wore gloves while handling the lizard, a precaution Millie admitted she should have considered sooner, despite her earlier insistence on being cautious. The lizard seemed to improve significantly once out of its enclosure. Michael struggled to maintain his grip on the restless creature as it squirmed vigorously, attempting to break free. It even managed to escape momentarily, but since they were in the safety of the sealed-off bathroom, it couldn't get far. This behavior only fueled Michael's doubts, which in turn began to unsettle Millie. She worried that her father might be right, and that her investment in veterinary care might prove futile, ultimately leading to parting ways with her beloved pet as agreed with her parents. Despite her growing anxiety, it was too late for second thoughts, so she had to project confidence in her choice. They quickly returned the lizard to its cage and prepared to leave for the vet. The journey to the veterinary clinic was tense for Millie. She watched anxiously as Sirius, her lizard, thrashed about in his enclosure, visibly disturbed by the sensation of movement while remaining stationary. She recalled how their cat exhibited similar behavior during car rides and hoped that Sirius wouldn't be overly stressed by the ordeal. Upon arrival, Millie and Michael learned they would need to wait, as the vet was delayed with a lengthy surgery. They accepted the wait calmly, and Millie felt a slight relief, hoping it would give Sirius a chance to settle down before examination. A relaxed lizard would certainly make the vet's job easier. About 30 minutes later, they were ushered into the consultation room by a weary-looking veterinarian. By the time the vet was ready to see Millie's lizard, the clinic had already closed for the day. Exhausted and eager to head home, the vet hoped for a quick last appointment. However, upon examining the dark-colored lizard more closely with his glasses, his demeanor shifted dramatically. Millie would never forget the look of sudden recognition that flashed across his face as his eyes widened, reacting swiftly. The vet's burst of energy seemed fueled by adrenaline as he recoiled from the containment box and urgently instructed Millie and Michael to step back. Confused but compliant, they retreated, though their minds were racing for an explanation. Without providing any immediate answers, the vet hastily moved the box to a separate room, instructing them to wait. Millie's impulse was to follow, but her father restrained her. Sensing the gravity of the situation and recognizing that it was beyond their control, anxious and filled with uncertainty, they waited in the initial room. During this time, distant sounds of the vet's shaky voice on the phone punctuated the tense silence. After a nerve-wracking 20 minutes, the vet returned to the room, noticeably without the lizard. Millie's anxiety turned to alarm as she demanded answers about her pet's whereabouts, her concerns escalating with each unanswered question. Although the vet was hesitant to divulge any information initially, he insisted on hearing the details from Michael and his daughter first. With Michael's help, he managed to soothe his distraught daughter, and they began cooperating with the vet. Millie explained where she had found the animal, her activities with it, and what she had fed it. She even confessed to handling the creature without any protective gloves, which earned her disapproving looks from both her father and the vet. It turned out Millie hadn't been completely honest about being cautious with the animal, potentially exposing herself to danger if the creature was venomous. However, the vet reassured them quickly. He seemed relieved after hearing Millie's account and confirmed that the animal posed no serious threat unless it bit someone, which hadn't happened with Millie. He then mentioned that he had already contacted animal control to collect the black lizard, which was expected to arrive at any moment. Millie became distressed once more upon learning her lizard would be taken away, but the vet explained he had no other option. He recognized the lizard immediately upon seeing it, as did probably any other local vet, because a notice had been circulated about a week earlier among all local vets, animal shelters, and relevant agencies to be on the lookout for this specific lizard. The veterinarian elaborated that the lizard was an exceptionally rare and endangered creature, with none remaining in the wild and only a handful surviving within controlled breeding initiatives aimed at boosting their population. Sirius, the lizard Millie found, had escaped from one such program at a nearby university, which was significant as he was the only male in that facility. It was crucial for his recovery, though the university had almost lost hope since he could have wandered off anywhere in the forest, when Millie managed to capture Sirius. It was nothing short of miraculous. A chance so slim it was almost destiny. Millie and Michael were astounded by the story, and swiftly realized the importance of returning Sirius. Clearly, his role extended far beyond that of a simple pet. He was vital for the survival of his species. Millie's actions had inadvertently positioned her as a key player in the conservation efforts, and she was rewarded accordingly. The university offered to cover her first 2 years of tuition should she choose to attend, a gesture that relieved her from using her own savings for veterinary expenses. After watching the story above, do you have any thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. If you enjoyed our video, please like, subscribe, and share our channel. That's all about today's stories. See you next time.